Hey guys, we're doing a little tidbit right now. Nikki wrote an article that she sent to me, and I started reading it, but I really think that it should just be a conversation instead of um, something that you get to read. I think it needs to have a lot of back and forth. I did a quick read, and I have a bunch of questions, and I thought I'd be annoying if I um, put it all on paper. So, Nikki, why don't you read your article?
Happy to. So I titled this The Next Pet Retail Scandal, Unapproved Pet Food. And the way I wrote this is a little new for me. I kind of wrote it as a conversation piece, which is why I believe Taz wants to turn this into a discussion. And it's really important. I think, it highlights a lot of the frustration that I have in the industry. And a lot of that comes from my evolution coming from the human side of things. And we keep making a lot of the same mistakes in the pet food industry. And the simple truth is that these wouldn't be allowed to keep happening on the human side. There would be measures put in place to at least attempt to prevent them. So I'm just going to start it off. As a retailer, I see a flood of new pet food products entering the marketplace. When considering products for my store, I don't make those decisions lightly. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my last 6 years as a retail store owner. I take each of the lessons that I have learned seriously. Some of the lessons have taught me that new products are not always as nice as the packaging or ingredient deck may seem. And so, what do I mean by that? The problem with many new products today is that they contain unapproved ingredients, and many are not proven nutritionally adequate, which is a whole nother problem. The most recent rush of new products started with dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM, and the whole debacle that was, and ancient grain pet foods were born. If you're familiar with my work and you know that the problem with virtually all of these ancient grain products is that they're unvalidated. This means that nearly all pet food companies who rushed ancient grain formulations to market have no idea if their foods are nutritionally adequate. In other words, we have no idea if these foods are going to cause other issues or the very issue that they are supposed to prevent, which is DCM. So why do I bring that up? It appears that many retailers are woefully unaware that we have a couple of looming issues that are likely to disrupt our business once again. So I'm going to lay them out for you. These points matter because virtually all of the grain-free products are similarly unvalidated, and most retailers are not recognizing this is why DCM became a debacle, meaning that companies could not be bothered to spend a minimal amount of money or a fraction of their marketing budget to run laboratory nutrient analyses and digestibility studies to prove that their foods were supplying adequate nutrition. So manufacturers are literally cutting the same corners by releasing ancient grain foods into the marketplace without any data to back up those formulations. The lesson here is that if you're going to stock, recommend, and associate yourself with brands that offer ancient grain products, you need to ask for validation that those products are adequate. Validation means an Afco nutrient analysis on the finished product and a digestibility study to prove that the nutrients within the food are able to be used by the pet. Any excuse for not having these is unacceptable in today's climate. Sorry, not sorry. There is another looming liability lurking over the horizon for us as retailers. Are you aware that many existing and new products in the marketplace that are using ingredients that are unapproved for pet food? Crickets, unapproved. Sprouted seeds, unapproved.
I do have to jump in. Crickets are going to be approved.
They are, but they're not now.
Correct.
Fermented ingredients, unapproved. So if you don't believe me, all you have to do is consult the latest Afco manual and see if you can find any such ingredient listed. Spoiler alert, they are not. So why does this matter to you or to me as the retailer or the pet owner? Why should we as retailers be the ones concerned with making such significant changes to the industry? The simple answer is that we are the ones at the end of the day that have been the largest victims as retailers and as pet owners to most of the industry scandals. We're the ones left educating consumers and standing up for manufacturers, while larger companies and big box are able to pivot and offer any product without any regard to ethics or quality. That's what suits their bottom line. We saw it with DCM. And to take it a step further, a lot of us indie retailers and those within the industry had our work essentially taken, or for lack of a better way to say it, stolen, to help support some of those brands and some of those bigger retailers. Unapproved ingredients in pet food and treats mean that there is a potential for them to be pulled from your shelf by state or federal organizations. Why? Simply, the reason why they're unapproved is because their safety and adequacy profiles are unknown. There's not enough nutritional data to know if these ingredients are safe for pets. There's also not enough research or validation to know if these ingredients deliver the proper levels of nutrients and if they're metabolized appropriately. When any ingredient is put through a process that changes the original state or profile of that ingredient, it likely means that the nutrient profile or bioavailability of those nutrients within the ingredient have changed. You may want to argue that if bioavailability of nutrients is improved, that is good, right? Not necessarily, because if vitamin D or vitamin A, for example, bioavailability is improved and raised, that actually is potentially dangerous because high levels of those are associated with toxicity concerns. Some retailers are either tired or are they're choosing to ignore some of the warning signs within industry that some within industry are trying to teach us. At the end of the day, independent retailers are often left fighting the battles resulting from manufacturers not doing their homework. It's plain and simple. Examples include Avenger's with pentobarbital, Diamond, Taste of the Wild with salmonella, Hills, vitamin D, Midwestern with aflatoxin, and the grain-free brands with DCM. The list goes on. We're now nearly 3 years into the DCM debacle. Do we have the energy to fight another scandal for the manufacturer with little or no support? Or instead, should we be asking the right questions and holding manufacturers accountable so that we're armed with information when, not if, the next issue arises? We're about to enter another battle, a large battle, and we're not even done fighting the DCM one. I've called these scandals self-inflicted wounds in the past, and they truly are. Each of them could have been prevented if we just put some standards in place. Yet we keep falling into the same trap over and over. We need to agree that accountability for nutrient validation of all products and ingredients in and entering the marketplace is something that should be non-negotiable. In summary, it means that for all new products entering your store, if a manufacturer is not able to provide data to prove adequacy of those products, they shouldn't have a home on your shelf until they do. So what about current products? Start demanding that information for those products as well, and don't take in any of their new products or line extensions until they do. If you start leaning into the brands that are doing their due diligence to protect pets, and eventually the rest will start to catch on. They'll just have to trim their marketing budget.
You know, when I read this, your your question to me was simple, right? And I just thought it's not as simple as you're saying this article is. I mean, it's not. I would be removing a lot of stuff from my shelves. I mean, I would be taking answers out of my freezers.
Mm-hmm.
Products are fermented. Tell me.
I think you have to draw a line, right? It doesn't mean you have to toss everything out your door. But it does mean that you can set a standard for products moving forward, right? So you start to take new products in or consider new products, or, you know, we all do inventory revamps, whether it's once, twice, 3 times a year, or every couple years, whatever it is for your situation. But you can start to refine your inventory based on those companies who are at least checking some boxes, right? There are few companies that do check them all, but there are companies that do check some and are making efforts to do better. And a lot of them are your really small ones, right? But it means that we can start to make a change. It's not going to be overnight, but it ultimately what it means is that you don't have to keep taking in these line extensions. And I think From is a really easy one to pick on because it's huge. And how many times a year do they come out with a new SKU?
Well, Blue Buffalo does that.
Right, for sure.
Science Diet does it. It's like almost every brand does it. Everyone came out with ancient greens. I mean, why does Afco even matter? And why do the approved ingredient?
Yep.
Here's my question. I have the Afco book
You have
right
lots
here.
of questions.
Right? Grease
Yeah.
is an approved ingredient. Okay, so AFCO is nothing but their book of approved ingredient rules the pet industry, right?
Yep.
Do we ignore the values some products and brands have brought to pet health with the use of unregulated ingredients? It's just a double-edged sword.
I agree, but it's all we have right now. So you
So
can't.
we're okay with doing shitty stuff. It's
No,
okay.
we're not. We're not. But so Indy's right. We claim there's so many questions, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to answer them all. So to back up, Indy's, we claim to be different, right? We claim to be different than Petco. Petco's whole debacle with, oh, we're gonna change this, no synthetics, whatever we want to call it. But so we do, right? We do some things differently. We don't, I don't want to say all of us, but a lot of us don't allow corn, wheat, soy, or we don't allow ingredients that are outwardly manufactured in China, right? So those are things that I feel like collectively most of us kind of subscribe to, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes to ingredients or pet food or formulation, really AFCO is the only thing that we have. And in order for us to do better, whether that's a new organization, a new standard, we want to have something else to hold pet food accountable to, we still need to do our homework, right? You still need to have the nutrient profiles and the safety profiles on the ingredients that we believe or we know from from anecdotal evidence to be safe or to be healthful or to provide benefit. We still need the basic scientific and nutritional data to back up the claims. It's the same thing with a raw argument. We all know that there's a million benefits to raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still to this day, there's not a whole lot of published data.
Those foods that were thought to create DCM, they were all AFCO approved foods.
They were, but so there's several layers to this, right? So AFCO approved ingredient deck, that's like a very low bar, right? We know that there's a very low bar to entry to pet food. We know this, but that's a low bar that even some of the quote unquote best pet food companies are still unable to clear. The second hurdle would be run that AFCO profile, prove to me that your food actually has at least minimal ingredients. The third one would be digestibility. Prove to me that that animal is able to assimilate the nutrients that you claim are in that food. There are 3 bars. They're pretty low, but if you can do those things, and then we can talk about food safety, whether that's pathogens, whether that's toxicants in the food. That's another bar to clear. But even if you just back it up and make it those 3 simple: AFCO approved ingredient profile, AFCO at least minimum nutrient profile, and a digestibility study. How many brands actually fit those 3? Not very many of our favorite indie brands can even meet that. And that's the minimum.
I'm sorry, if I was to go with brands that were AFCO approved, my cats would be dead at age 7. Seriously, my dog would have been probably arthritic by age 6 if I was feeding the shit out there that really that meets those standards. So if I was to ignore the value that some of those brands bring out, I mean, what and the other I think AFCO needs to be revamped.
100%. But so back up for a second, because some of those brands that you would say, like, so let's just call it for what it is, our grocery store shelf brands.
Mm-hmm.
Call them and you ask for AFCO nutrient profile or digestibility study, they're not giving it to you either. So same standard.
Fancy Feast.
They won't give it to you.
Arena One.
They
won't give it to you. Okay, so you're saying cut that shit out as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what stands?
We're not picking on just indie brands. We're not picking on the grocery store. It's everyone. Like, this is a bar that everybody has to clear. Just anybody can bring pet food to market. Look at the company Jinx. There's a mattress company and they make pet food. Hello.
That's pretty fucked up. I'm sorry.
Hello.
And
But
why does all the responsibility fall on the independent retailers for everything? Why is it the small independents that have to, oversee this process? I know we're making promises.
yeah. So it's a multi-tiered answer, right? So at the end of the day, again, it's our livelihood, right? We've put our blood, sweat, tears, our entire life savings, our everything, right? Anyone in the pet industry works more than anyone else, right?
Yeah.
So if that's your lifeblood, don't you owe it to yourself and your family to at least afford some sort of protection and to the pets that you serve? Right? How many of us, and I'm not exempt from this, how many of us have been burned from recalls from companies that are responsible for either making pets ill or pet deaths?
Yeah.
How many of us, right?
I gotta tell you, I texted BC Henshin today, and BC. I
Great
just
article in PPN, by the way.
yeah. And yeah, I just wanted to see how he was. And honestly, I asked him if if he had carried the Sport Mix brand, and he said no. And he asked why, and my concern was really, it's, as a retailer, I would feel horrific if something I sold in my store caused an animal to die
Mhm.
because the manufacturer didn't do their quality control.
Well, and so to that point, something that I was really shocked at, fellow retailers, indies across the country, in Connecticut, not too far from my store, as well as well-known retailers throughout the country that I know carry Sport Mix. They didn't even post it, the recall,
Oh my
on
God.
their Facebook pages. They weren't
Oh,
making it, they weren't making their consumers aware. Now, I don't know if they sent out an email. I don't know if they called everyone that purchased it. I don't know what their setup is.
okay, so then there's no point in talking about this because it's just what you don't know.
Right. But at the same time, I feel like us as industries, that's not entirely, but it is a large indie brand, right? Sport Mix, Midwestern, a lot of the things that they make.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, it boiled down to them, Midwestern, not following their own quality control procedures. In that plant, thought it was a very small, limited set of SKUs or date codes. Turns out it was a lot bigger than that. And so for me, the question arises, were they not following procedures when it came to other foods, even though they didn't have corn? So maybe the aflatoxin from that ingredient wasn't particularly a risk, but were they cleaning the machinery? Were they cleaning the storage bins? And what happened with other facilities? So for me, transparency is something I think that's really important. I will call out a brand whether I carry it or not. And so the question is the rest of their products that I carry safe? Because I don't know if they were following their own safety.
Well, I think every retailer needs to ask that question with any brand that has a major recall. Science Diet,
But that's the
yeah,
point.
all of them. Yeah. And this, if I had just read this article that you just read to the audience and I didn't know you, I wouldn't see this as a proactive approach to getting manufacturers to validate their products and be accountable. I'd see it as another article that would make me feel unsure
Yeah.
as to what the takeaway from the information that you're giving me. And then it would probably give me more anxiety and agita as an independent retailer. So I want you to be precise in what you are saying here. I want you to pinpoint exactly what it is because we're going to make this a quickie. I'll have no
Well,
patience.
so I think you're right. I don't think this article is going to make a manufacturer make a change, and it's not supposed to, because an article is not going to, right? It's simply just not going to happen. I don't care if it was on the front page of the New York Times. There's not going to
Give
be
me
an
action
article.
points. Give me action points. Give me action points that I
Well,
can do. And it's not, and you have to say, you got to do this.
yeah.
We can't also give up our livelihood either. And also, consumers come in and they don't know the facts.
Yep.
They are listening to their vets that say everything has to be AFCO approved.
Which Afco doesn't approve foods.
Well, but
So
that's a lot. There's a lot of misinformation.
there is. So I think as retailers, right, the key takeaway is any new products you bring in, ask them for nutrition data, ask them for a nutrient profile, a tested one, not a predicted one, and ask them for a digestibility study. Those two things really should be benchmarks going forward. And there are small companies that are doing it. There are, and there's more and more all the time. I poke so many of them so often, and I know that there's a lot that have data that's coming. It's going to be, I think, an exciting year for some of the smaller brands and for indies that are paying attention, that are into this stuff and that want to see this stuff. But I think we, as collectively as indies, we need to put our foot down and say, listen, we say we stand for quality, we say we stand for ethics, and some of us, for some of us, sustainability is really important. So we need to put our money where our mouth is. And as we refine our current inventory, it doesn't mean you kick everything out, but as you refine your current inventory, keep those things in mind. Are those companies being transparent? Are they answering your questions? What happens when you get a return and, somebody's saying their dog got sick? Are they taking that food back? Are they testing it? Are they doing their due diligence? I send food back to companies all the time. And they do test for certain things. And I mean, we've never had knock on wood, never had a problem. But are those companies, do they truly care about the safety profiles of their food?
And they have to give you that feedback, and it's our responsibility to follow up and see what happened.
Yeah.
Um, can we name some brands that are good? Because we always name the shitty ones.
Yeah. So I keep saying small ones. I do want to give a shout out.
I don't take money for anything I do here. And when I'm not in this business anymore, I'm still going to be an advocate for animal health and well-being.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to be a part of that.
Yeah. So one I do want to call out that is bigger, that I think a lot of people know about and that we do really well with, despite the fact, per BC's article, despite the fact that they are in big box and on Chewy and everywhere else, is Nature's Variety Instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal brand. They do check all the boxes. And their safety profiles in terms of, or I should say their food safety standards are impeccable. Do they HPP their raw? Yeah, they do. Some people like it, some people don't, but it's a nice entry level for some people that have vets that are concerned about raw and pathogens.
Do they do digestibility profiles?
They do, and they have a lot of stuff published on their website. And if they don't, because it's not for every recipe yet, if you reach out to them or reach out to Dr. Wynn and her team, they will provide it to you. Not once have I hit any issues. They are working on some sweeping changes to their website, and I have been promised that they're going to be published on their website this year. But as of right now, they're all not. So that's one that, I give major props to, because they have done so many awesome things in the last few years. And they consistently change formulas. If they find out something's not to their standard or par, they will make a change. And you have to respect that. Bixby is another one, smaller kibble line. They are doing all of their homework. I believe when we talked to Lonnie Koha as well, was doing a lot of these things. Again, not published, but if you reach out and you ask, we know that Guardian does, Noble Foods. We know that Petcurian has nutrient analysis. They will not provide digestibility. Working on that. We're poking them always. Who else do I have off the top?
That's pretty good. We're done there. People
Yeah.
need to start calling themselves, but brands you just put out there.
Yeah. So there are, and I think it's important to just be aware of that going forward, because if you have companies and you have ingredients that either they're not safety testing or they're not doing their new due diligence nutritionally, it's going to bite us. There are people that know this, and it's coming down the pike.
All right, Nikki, good info. Until next time, we're going to keep rocking it out and passing this information along for retailers and consumers. I think everyone needs to be in the know. Thanks so much.